Okay, I like to walk around, so if I'm overpowering you, I can throw this away or not. Yeah, we were doing web mapping before Google was even, or maybe thought of, but certainly not out there. Started 2000. So I'm really glad William talked about what citizen science is all about earlier. If you weren't here, well, I'm sorry. You'll just have to figure it out as we go. But his description of what being a citizen science is and how it works into your community and the opportunities was really great. I appreciated that. So a bit about the Community Network. ENGO stands for Environmental Government Organization. And the CMN is, of course, our short version for me not having to say Community Mapping Network every time. Since 2000, we've built about somewhere between 50 and 60 web mapping applications that are tailored to the unique interests of a community group or a watershed or a government agency that doesn't have enough money to do the job properly in the first place. Whatever we can do to help is the idea. This is specifically about a citizen science project to try and understand some of the habitat requirements for a family of birds called nightjars. The reason we're doing it is because, well, all three species listed there are in steep decline in North America. So we're looking at an 80% decline over the last 20 some odd years. Two of the species, nighthawk and common, I knew I'd get this wrong, common poorwill, the eastern whippoorwill are listed in Canada as threatened species. So it's really important we understand where their breeding habitat is in Canada. They basically spend the summer here, nest on the ground, and then are migrating down into South America for the winter. The idea is that people can volunteer to do a one-night survey every year, June, July, to listen for these birds, half hour before sunset for a few hours. Each one of these little blobs represent survey routes that have been pre-identified, 16 kilometers, 10 miles long. The yellow ones are up for grabs, so if you know anybody who lives in any of these provinces or anyone who wants to coordinate surveys in some of these other provinces, let me know. This is a shot of our web atlas that is the introduction for how to sign up to do a route survey as about a month ago, something like that. So if you're going to sign up, you select a route, and there's a hyperlink from this thing that pops up when you mouse over the line work, and that link takes you to place to register. Once you've registered, you want to find more about what you need to do to be a citizen scientist. This is one of the opportunities or where you would manage the one or many routes that you've decided to survey, and also where you come back to do your data entry later on. The point of this is now, since we've gone on most of Canada, there's about 350 or more volunteers. There's more routes than that. So as the volunteers grow, you need to scale up like this to manage those volunteers, get them started, help them, give them resources to return their data. The early years, it was just, paper and spreadsheets and emails and some Google Maps with bubbles on them, and just in BC, and that was almost unmanageable. So the idea is that this is possible. We have one person coordinating in each province or territory in Canada. And to get that information, we need the help of FME Server that generates some output based on the route that you've selected. And there's the obligatory web workspace, which is pretty simple. I'm not an FME, well, I dabble in it. I know a bit about it, but really another fellow did the work for me. But what I wanted to show is that our data sources are shapefiles for the routes, and the station locations and all the other information is tied or read from a SQL Server database. And I guess the important part in using FME Server is the data streaming service that works very well. And one of the glitches we found is that you have to have a guest account set up on your FME server. Incidentally, we don't use cloud anything. We have a good arrangement with a local government that provides us with IT services, so we have several virtual servers running, and we're able to have FME Server in-house. On-premises is the term they've been using here. And then you have, from those buttons previously, you have the options of getting coordinates in different forms and the specific route map. And I should mention, where is the back button? I'm a Mac user. How can you tell, eh? Oh, the one that says backspace. This looks relatively simple, but embedded in here are two custom transformers provided by SAFE. One is the map overlayer, and embedded inside that is well, they sort of show. Embedded inside the map overlayer is a static map fetcher, which are what we use against the Google API to produce what I hope you're going to see here. So every user gets just a piece of paper if they want to print it with their station numbers on it, some coordinates so that they can relate to what they're doing, the station locations, and if you're Don Murray or you have a GPS and you want to load the data, there's the GPX or XML file. And there's a GML file as well if you want to see it in Google Earth. But all these are optional outputs depending. Personally, I just go out with the handheld GPS and the paper forms for making the observations, which I'm not going to get into, but I can tell you more about it afterwards. This is what we've accomplished so far. This is the common poor whale, which is not one of the listed species yet. So 3 years in BC, and then last year BC and the other provinces you saw on that original map. That many surveys, about 365 volunteers last year. We hope to have maybe 400 or 500 this year, if all goes well. And then each year the data is pushed out to Bird Studies Canada, which I don't know if you know, it's a long established multiple survey protocols for different issues around conservation of bird populations. Nature Counts is their sort of public portal for displaying data. I guess the takeaway here is more about managing people than, I mean, FME has really made that easy for us. But if you have a reliable method that's well thought out and a stable data management system, then you can get reliable data on a large scale. And that's one of the first questions an agency asks you when you tell them, oh, our data came from citizen sciences. What's the quality? How can I trust it? Well, all of this data will be fed into the recovery plans in Canada for those two species that are listed. So I think this data set is going to, in the coming years, is going to be very useful. I want to thank the fellow who did the FME work for me and some of the map authoring. Peter Finch, he can't be here today. He's got a day job. He was here yesterday, so his employer did pass him on. If you want to find out more about the not-for-profit organization, NGO, that we did this project for, WildResearch, they're really the genesis of this idea. There's links for me on the Community Mapping Network. And if you're local or somewhere in North America and want to partner with us, I'd love to talk to you. I guess it's question time.
Thank you very much, Rob.
Yeah?
All right, so we have a couple of minutes left, so I would encourage anybody if you have any questions.
Yeah?
Yeah, how do you determine the survey points, where the field personnel are going to look to monitor
The routes are chosen by a couple of the coordinators that are biologists, ornithologists, and the stations are 1.6 kilometers or a bit more separated. That was decided an appropriate method to ensure that you're not double sampling the nightjars when they're calling over their nesting territories. Or they also, the common nighthawk does a power dive wing boom, which is indicative of territorial defense. It's a lovely sound. You know that sound. We used to hear them here, but over the city, but not anymore. You have to get out of the city a bit.
East Coast?
Good. Maybe it's the eastern pool wheel. I don't think they do the wing boom. I'm not sure. I'll have to ask my daughter on that one.
That was my question. actually.
Oh.
Do you have any more questions for Rob? Yes, Mark.
Is a similar approach being used for other research surveys? Like, is this limited to nightjar, or do you guys use this for something else?
Did everyone hear the question? Is anyone else or a similar survey for this? No, this is kind of the first time for us. But it's given me some ideas about mapping eagle and osprey nests in coastal British Columbia, which is something I've been involved with through another web atlas for years. And it's really been the province of a few consultants or seasonal staff, and that has lost a lot of interest in funding. So we're hoping to actually push out a teaching resource into post-secondary schools, if I can get a project together, to educate that first-year class, use the basic trigonometry for surveying tree height and location using GPS and clinometers and rangefinders. But if that happens, we're going to have a lot of opportunity for volunteering to go look in areas, and this approach of managing a bunch of volunteers through pre-assigned locations and sign up and data entry is, I mean, I can even throw in a mobile app in that because it's a pretty simple set of attributes you'd catch. So that's the only other idea I've had, but it's pretty slick just to be able to customize information for it help empower the citizen scientist. Yeah.
I wonder if there's any sort of checks for, you said a lot of times people get questioned on the quality of the data in citizen science. Is there any way that this process kind of checks the data to make sure that it's actually proper before it goes into the survey system?
You speaking specifically about the nightjar survey?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to happen because of the handful of volunteers that are qualified ornithologists who are managing the volunteers. So there's pre-survey training so that they're hearing what is an obvious bird. There's nothing else that sounds like a common nighthawk. And then the data submission is available in a SQL Server database so that those coordinators can actually look at and validate, and they've actually made a personal connection with the birding community that are doing it. So I don't think we're going to get any Hell's Angels offering up nightjar survey data just for the fun of it. But, you know, that is a question. And one of the other arguments I've always made for this kind of web-mapped information about valuable natural resources is it's a flag on the planet. So if you have an issue with what's there, if it affects your land development or your business or your property value, whatever, it's your responsibility under Canadian law to carry out further surveys to confirm or not there's a nest there of importance. This is just a cautionary approach. And so it kind of takes the liability off of what you're providing through a web portal and puts it on the shoulders of the person who is responsible for the actions on the land. And that, most people buy into that. It's a bit of a BS approach, but, it does work. And in law, they are responsible. You can't sort of pretend you didn't see it if it was obvious to you in terms of public information.
All right.
Okay?
Thank
Yeah?
you very much, Rob.
Thank you.
Please make sure to fill out